But of course, just before the matches kicked off this evening, just before 7:45 tonight, we heard that Chelsea had confirmed that Rafa Benitez had been appointed their interim first-team coach until the end of the season, taking over from Roberto Di Matteo. We did reflect on that with Eamon before the match earlier on. But John, your thoughts on that? Di Matteo going, Rafa Benitez in until the end of the season. Is it a good move?
Well, I don't know, Dara. Di Matteo did win the European Cup last year, or the Champions League last year, and the FA Cup, and that was a great achievement. But then, as we saw in the summer, they didn't appoint him straight away. They left him 6 weeks, 2 months before they actually appointed him manager again. And in the meantime, they're selling players and buying players, which means he's not really in charge of it. I find it a little bit ironic that Benitez, I mean, one of the reasons Mourinho was sacked, we spoke about this early on, was because it wasn't sexy enough, the football. Well, Benitez doesn't produce sexy football. And also, from Benitez's point of view, he railed against the regime at Liverpool for not giving him the money to spend or not being in charge of his own destiny. Well, you know, he's gone to Chelsea now. He's not going to produce sexy football, and he's certainly not going to get the conditions there that he had at Liverpool. Not as good, anyway. I think whoever goes to Chelsea will have to, like Di Matteo. I always feel sorry for people in football who get the sack. I don't have too much sympathy for Di Matteo, because I think when he took the job, he knew the conditions in which he took the job. He was coach. He wasn't in charge of buying and selling, which means you're doing the job with your hand tied behind your back. And he's out now, but he'll get his compensation. I'm surprised at the Benitez appointment. I'm not surprised at Di Matteo going, but I'm surprised at the Benitez appointment. But there's not that many around at the moment. I mean, they do have Guardiola seems to be the man they're waiting for at the end of the season. So that probably suits them, certainly for the time being, anyway.
Right.
I think the owner knows who he wants, Dara, but it's just being patient and trying to get him in.
It's Guardiola.
It's Guardiola. You know, we all know that he wants to play sexy football. He's talked about Barcelona many times as an owner, how he sees the philosophy of his team, how they play. And the man he thinks that can bring it to Chelsea, which is Guardiola. And you look at the players that he's brought in, like Oscar, like Hazard. You know, you've already got Matteo there. So they've got the makings of players who can get on the ball and pass it from defence into midfield and can make things happen. But you need a leader and a focal point. But unfortunately, Chelsea, you know, it was like 8 managers in the last 9 years that they've had. I mean, the changeover of personnel at the highest level, which is your manager, which is meant to be the one that organises the training and everything that goes with it, the team, the players that come in. The change around is incredible, and yet they've won trophies, and lots of trophies in the last few years, and you wonder how they've done it. He's
got to allow, whether it be Guardiola or anybody else, he's got to allow that particular manager, whoever it might be, to manage. There's no good. He has a history, Abramovich. Mourinho was winning trophies for him, and he signs Shevchenko and Ballack, which definitely weren't Mourinho, and then they fell out and gone. And he's done that. He's done that with this particular manager. You know, Di Matteo wasn't picking the players. And I go back and I've said it many times. Every manager, whether it be Shankly or Revie or Busby, and all the great managers over here, Ferguson, have a vision of the team that they want on the pitch. And they need the players to make that vision come to life. Now, if you get a manager, in Abramovich's case, whether it be Mourinho, he had his vision, and he was being successful. Right, and then the owner comes in and says, right, there's Shevchenko, I'm giving you that. That vision has been destroyed. So you're not letting him, you're appointing a manager for his expertise, and then you're not allowing him to do the job. So whether it be Guardiola, who has a great record about what he's got to do, Abramovich, when he comes in, is to let him manage.
Guardiola said earlier on, before the Rafa Benitez announcement, that he wasn't going to make a decision on his future before 2013 at the earliest, which is only a few weeks away anyway. Bizarre kind of statement. But, Eamon, what happens if Benitez now wins the league for Chelsea?
Don't worry, Dara. He ain't going to win the league for Chelsea, with Chelsea.
Said that about Di Matteo, that he wouldn't win the Champions League and the Cup. Not you, but people said that.
Well, I mean, I think John's right. He did a great job at Chelsea in difficult circumstances, just winning the Cup. To win the Champions League, there was a serious element of good fortune about it. But he did have in that team Terry, Lampard, Drogba. Big players. Even though Terry was missing for the final, he had Lampard and Drogba. They're gone. I think Di Matteo, as John described it, had no chance. Players in that 2-month interregnum between winning the Champions League and actually getting the job, players came and went from the club that he had nothing to do with. That's not a sound way to do business. The fact of the matter is, however astute he is in business, Abramovich. When it comes to football, he's a fool, a rich fool. And he's got... Well, that's what he is, Dara. He's a fool.
But they've had a fair amount of success. They've won serious trophies.
Mourinho was the person who did the business for him. And the reason he fell out with Mourinho was he bought players off his own bat as a gift that Mourinho didn't want. The other reason is Clark, the guy who's at West Brom now, who was Mourinho's assistant, he wanted him out. And Mourinho wouldn't stand for it. He stood by his man. But it was only a matter of time. The reason Ancelotti fell out with him was because Abramovich sacked Ray Wilkins. Ray Wilkins is a very respected figure in the game, was doing a great job. Ancelotti won the double, Dara, the Premier League and the Cup, and then got the sack. Because Abramovich, apparently what happened is Ray Wilkins asked him to leave the dressing room. He said it wasn't the right time. He comes in the dressing room. He goes to the training ground with his entourage. Now, you don't like the expression fool. I can see by your face. That's what he is. He's a stage door Johnny. And he wants to be hanging around football. There's loads of them. Now, this guy's got more money than most. And he's going to make a mess of it. He's made a mess of it. And you watch what happens next. The reason Chelsea won things was because of John Terry, Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, and those massive big players they have. They don't have those players now.
You should be doing it. What you're trying to do at any club, Dar, is to build a dynasty. And you don't build a dynasty by having 8 different managers. The model you go on all the time is Manchester United. Ferguson was given the job, gave the resources, they're allowed to do the job, nobody's hands are tied behind his back. Manchester have had one manager in the last 26 years.
And it took him 3 years, Ferguson, to win something. And he wouldn't have lasted 3 years.
Longer, wasn't it?
Well, longer.
The Cup, yeah.
But he wouldn't have lasted with this owner. That's why he's a fool.